Hey everyone. In this short video, what I'm going to show you is the new release of OntoBricks, which is the version number 0.4. So we have some great new features that are being added, in fact, in this new version. And the biggest one clearly is the add-on of Lakebase. So Lakebase is now used and leveraged to store the triple store. So that's going to be the database engine for managing all the triples at the end instead of the LadybugDB database that was used beforehand. So a lot of stuff about the configuration that I'm going to show you during a short demo. Secondly is typically linked to the Lakebase usage. So now we will use, in fact, in OntoBricks, the table synchronization. So meaning what we'll use behind the scene is Lakeflow to synchronize all the data that are typically coming from the Lake house, sorry, and the Lakebase database. So we will use this Lakeflow just because it's more efficient. You can also manage delta load and things like that. Another feature which is interesting is this capability to export and import one or many different domains as you wish, just to let you, in fact, push to different environment exactly the domain you have work on. Another one, which is also an add-on from the D2Key lab, is a way, in fact, to detect pitfalls and to ensure that the best practice has been respected when it's about designing your ontology. So you'll see that it's kind of checks that's going to help you, in fact, to ensure that your design is good. Another one is the add-on of HL7. So if you are working in the healthcare industry, you would like to import a specific ontology about it. So we have had this capability to import FHIR ontology directly from their website, just to let you start not from scratch, but with something which is already standard. And the last but not the least is something like sometimes you have some kind of complexity about, you have different entities and you may have the same name for the relationship. So that's a kind of blocker sometimes. For example, if you have as a contract, this customer as a contract, this customer as a claim, and you would like to use the same name for the relationship. So we had this capability to manage labels instead of directly the names of the identifier. So it has to let you use the same label for many different relationships. So let's jump into the demo now and just look at what's new. So first of all, if you go to the settings now, so here is the new version, obviously. Here you just click on the settings and GraphDB, the new tab that has been added. You'll be able to see, in fact, this configuration of Lakebase. So of course, when you're in Lakebase, you let me jump into Lakebase, for example, you have to specify a project, you have to specify a branch, you have to specify a database, and the last is, of course, a schema where you can typically store all of your different tables like this. So all of this configuration can be done here in the settings. Secondly, you'll need to specify how you would like to synchronize, in fact, your triple stores, your Lakehouse data with your triple store, sorry. So you can choose to manage that directly by using SQL or using Lakeflow instead, just by selecting this option here. And when you select Lakeflow or table synchronization, you have different categories. And the main one are typically snapshot synchronization or trigger synchronization. And of course, you have other options like this that's going to help you, in fact, to configure this new way to synchronize your data with your graph information. So once you jump to the build, now we have provided a new screen that's going to help you to really more understand how the build is going on. Typically, we have seen and heard from many different customers that when they load, they cannot see anything on what's happening. They cannot see if there's some kind of errors. So here now, if I'm running a build now, what you'll see is all the different steps with their duration, just to be able to follow this build step by step. Another thing which is interesting, and you'll see all of the different objects that are typically involved in the build. First of all, is of course the triple store itself, which is kind of view which reflects all the SQLs you need to build, in fact, the triple store. This is the table synchronization object that is created inside Databricks, and that's going to run, in fact, the Lakeflow pipeline behind the scenes. So you'll see here, this is the table synchronization object, and you see that here is typically running to synchronize this data with Lakebase. And the last but not the least is in fact the target table directly inside Lakebase. So here you'll find out how you can typically look at and query, in fact, this table directly in Lakebase. You see that I've got all different duration, all the different main steps when running, in fact, this build. So that's for the first one. The second one is about this export, the import and export. So if you go now to browse, registry browse, and you'll be able to see two new buttons here. The first one is export, so that's going to give you this capability to export, sorry, a different version of your domain here. And that's good. If you click on export here, you'll see that you'll be able to get, in fact, a file, an OBX file, which typically gathers all these different configuration about your domains. A simple import typically with the same file, just upload these elements and this configuration to your domains directly. Now, the pitfall detector, which is an interesting add-on, I think, typically something we have gathered from the D2K Labs, which is another GitHub project, and we typically integrated into the OntoBricks. So here, if I'm jumping into ontology, and now there's a new menu item, which is pitfalls, I have many different checks I could typically apply to see if my design, my ontology design, typically respects some kind of guidance or best practice and things like that. So that's going to highlight different problems you may take a look on. Maybe it's not real problems, just warnings, but you need to look at that, maybe to ensure that everything will be okay at the end. About new import, so that's an important one as well. So it's about importing a new and fresh ontology that's coming from IR. So if you are working on HL 7 and you would like to import an ontology that has been already done by the standards, so you have this capability to import different version and different domain and subdomain about FHIR. And yeah, the last but not the least is about this labels I was just talking about beforehand. So I think it's an important one because sometimes it's very complicated to find different names for all of these different relationships. Because as you know, most of the time relationship are typically can be seen as kind of verbs, and you can have the same verbs for the same meaning for different relationships. So it's quite hard, in fact, to have, for example, something like that if you want to design it correctly. So now we have had, in fact, this capability to differentiate between name and labels. So here the names remains absolutely unique in the design. So here has claim, and here, for example, has contract. But what OntoBricks is going to retrieve when you query it from the knowledge graph or from the MCP server is not the name, not the identifier, but instead the label, just to have more meaning about all the relationship you have to manage. So thank you very much. There's obviously a lot of different add-ons and very, very detailed add-ons. You can just take a look at that and go to the GitHub here just to see what's around. The new version, the 0.5, is gonna come very, very soon. So just keep in touch.